This is what the Republicans' jobs, jobs, jobs agenda looks like, by which, of course, I mean the abortion agenda. This is what Republicans did with their big new majority after the 2010 elections. The Republicans' jobs, jobs, abortion agenda has become so vast, they are focusing on this area of legislation so intently that it kind of seems like there should be a monthly newsletter for following this sort of thing. Actually, there kind of is, if you count the Guttmacher Institute's exhaustive monthly updates on what Republicans are trying to do to abortion rights now. With such a gigantic body of work to draw from, because they are working on it so intently, you can't actually pull out and identify trends in current anti-abortion lawmaking. There's categories and subcategories. One of the trends since 2010, and maybe even since a few years earlier, is the 20-week ban on abortion. It started in 2010 in the great state of Nebraska. Republican Governor Dave Heineman signed a law restricting when women are allowed to get an abortion in that state. Can't have them after the 20th week of pregnancy in Nebraska. Since then, similar laws have been enacted in 8 other states, including 3 of them that just passed the new bans into law this year. One important thing to know about these 20-week bans on abortion, about when you're allowed to get an abortion, is that these bans are totally unconstitutional. According to Roe v. Wade, according to the Supreme Court, states don't get to ban abortion before what's called viability. In the 2 years that these bans have been trending in the very red states, there hasn't really been much of an argument on that point. People who are doing this know it's unconstitutional. Many of the people pushing for these bans admit that they're unconstitutional. One anti-abortion group that wrote sort of model legislation for these things is on the record practically begging to be sued, begging for a court challenge, because they think if they get challenged on this, they might end up in court in a way that could have them overturning Roe versus Wade. They told Politico last year, quote, "This is all an explosion, which we think if presented to the court, they would recognize the rights of the fetus. I was surprised it wasn't challenged, and I would like to see that." They're begging for this. They're begging for a court challenge. Anti-abortion activists and lawmakers all over the country are inviting a court challenge with these abortion bans that are obviously unconstitutional. And it's been sort of a win-win situation for them. If they go to court, they think they'll get their chance to overturn Roe versus Wade and ban abortion altogether. That's what they most want. But in the meantime, while they're not being sued, they get the next best thing. They get a partial ban on abortion, a ban on some abortions, which are supposed to be constitutionally protected. They get to enforce these bans, even though everybody knows they're unconstitutional. They have not been able to end abortion rights in this country, but right now 6 states are enforcing with impunity laws that have rolled back abortion rights that are protected by Roe versus Wade, that are protected by the Constitution. And another 3 states have new bans like this, new 20-week bans that have not yet taken effect. Back in April, Arizona's Republican Governor Jan Brewer signed the most restrictive one of these bans yet. It actually bans abortions a little earlier than the rest of the 20-week bans, but it uses the same reasoning in doing so. It is set to go into effect in Arizona at the beginning of next month. One by one, in state after state, these laws have been allowed to take effect and to thereby chip away at abortion rights established in 1973 by Roe versus Wade. But as of today, there is reason to believe that that is not going to be allowed to happen anymore. This is a landmark decision. Today, the Center for Reproductive Rights and the ACLU filed a lawsuit. They decided to sue against the state of Arizona over its new ban, asking a federal judge to strike down that law as unconstitutional and in the meantime to block it from taking effect in 3 weeks, which is the time it's scheduled to go into effect. They're arguing that the ban violates the Supreme Court's precedent, which grants abortion rights until viability, that it stands to hurt women seeking abortions because of health complications. Quote, "It presents physicians with an untenable choice to face criminal prosecution for continuing to provide abortion care in accordance with their best medical judgment or to stop providing the critical care their patients need." This is the first time one of these new bans has been challenged in court. We have whinged on this show openly about the fact that these bans weren't being challenged before. Now they're being challenged. This is the first time since the 20-week ban became in fashion among the new Republican majority that it has not just been allowed to become law. The anti-abortion forces behind these bans now stand to get that big Supreme Court battle they have been looking for. But if they lose, if the courts decide to uphold Roe versus Wade and strike down Arizona's ban on certain abortions, the 7 states that are already enforcing bans might have to stop doing so. This one trend in the Republican Party's 2010 political capital campaign might be over.